This is the Stanley Hotel, supposedly one of the most haunted places in America, and it was here that Stephen King got the inspiration to write The Shining. But why? Let's find out. Stephen King had a strange experience while staying at the hotel. He wrote about it in his non-fiction book, Danse Macabre. He tells us that he and his wife stayed at the Stanley in room 217. It's important to know that Stephen King is a very successful horror author, but he isn't known for being the most brave person when it comes to ghost stories or haunted places. In fact, he says that he doesn't like haunted houses or anything like that. So when they arrived at the hotel, he said, "I didn't want to spend the night alone in a room, especially a supposedly haunted room." Well, as luck would have it, his wife Tabitha went down with food poisoning, and he was left all alone. While reading through some of the guest books, he found this entry from a previous guest. It read, "Room 217 is haunted by a little girl who died in the early 1900s. She walks the length of the hall, and then she vanishes." After reading this, he became a bit uneasy, but he still thought, how bad could it be? Then as the evening went on, things started happening. First, there were footsteps in the hallway outside his room. Then he heard a door open and close down the hall. Then he heard what sounded like a woman's voice, singing softly in what seemed like an old-fashioned European language. Then he went into the bathroom to wash his face. He turned on the hot water and looked at himself in the mirror. And this is when he saw something terrifying. It was the little girl from the guest book. She stood in the corner of the bathroom and watched him intently. He screams and runs out of the bathroom and tries to get away from her. But wherever he went in the room, she was always right behind him. He says that she never made a sound, but her presence was so strong that he could feel her breathing on his neck. He felt like he was being watched the entire night. He didn't sleep at all. In the morning, after of course the little girl vanished, he goes down to breakfast and asks the other guests if they saw a little girl or heard anything strange during the night. They hadn't. Then he goes to the front desk and asks if anyone died in room 217. The clerk looks in the computer and replies, "No, nobody died here. In fact, no one has ever died in any of the rooms here." Now, Stephen King wasn't sure if he should be relieved or not. This is when he went to the library to do some research on the hotel, and this is where he discovered that 2 children did die in the hotel. Their names were Alberta and Charlie Tone. They died in an accident in the early 1900s, which matched up perfectly with the story from the guest book. Now, just before we move on to part 2, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more videos like these. Part 2, the piano plays by itself. The Stanley Hotel isn't just haunted by a little girl. There are many other ghosts that make regular appearances. In fact, the whole place is so haunted that paranormal investigators have been called in to try to figure out exactly what's going on here. As part of their investigation, they decided to record the sounds in the hotel overnight to see if they could pick up any strange noises. While listening back to the recordings, they heard what sounded like piano music being played. The piano was located right outside their room, but when they investigated, they found that no one was playing the piano. Not only that, but they checked the entire hotel to make sure no one else was around. They even brought in infrared cameras to see if they could pick up any heat signatures, but there was no one there. Here's the thing though, this piano is still there today, and people still report hearing it playing by itself. But that's not the only time that this piano has been active. You see, back in 1939, there was a big celebration held at the hotel. It was the first winter carnival in the town of Estes Park. They were so excited to have this event at the hotel because it was something completely new. All the local businesses helped out to put on this show, and it was the biggest celebration that the town had seen in years. The people were dancing and having fun until suddenly the lights went out and everyone was plunged into total darkness. The party came to a halt and everyone was wondering what happened when suddenly the grand piano began to play. It continued to play Christmas carols for several minutes, then stopped. When the lights came back on, no one was at the piano and no one had even touched it. Even to this day, people say that the piano will sometimes play on its own, and it's believed to be the spirit of one of the former pianists from back in the day. Part 3. Guests report whispers. The Stanley Hotel is full of secret passageways, hidden staircases, and even a tunnel that leads to the neighboring hotel. That's because back in the day, this whole area was owned by one family. They wanted to make it easy for their guests to go between hotels, so they built these secret tunnels. But these tunnels aren't the only passageways here. There's also the Whispering Gallery. Here's how it works. If you stand in the right spot, you can whisper and your voice will echo throughout the entire hallway. But recently, guests have reported hearing whispers that weren't their own. It was around the same time that Stephen King was writing The Shining. He was inspired by all the activity going on in the hotel, but this wasn't the only time that strange voices were heard. Back in the 1960s, a reporter named Kyle Clark decided to spend the night in the hotel. While he was writing in his room, he heard the distinct sound of footsteps walking up the stairs outside his door. Then he heard a woman's voice talking in hushed tones. Just as he began to investigate, the sound stopped. Later, he talked to the staff about his experience and they told him that there was a couple that died in the hotel back in the 1940s. Their names were Catherine and Thomas. They were a married couple who were visiting the hotel for their anniversary, but they ended up dying together in a tragic accident. Since then, people have reported hearing their voices as well as seeing their spirits roaming the halls, but not everyone believes these stories. Some people believe that someone made up these ghosts to bring attention to the hotel. But if that was true, why do so many people hear the whispers and footsteps? The truth is, no one knows for sure if these ghosts are real or not. But one thing is certain, the Stanley Hotel is definitely haunted. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Are the ghosts real or are they made up? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. It is said that it is impossible to die on board the ship. But what happens when an apparition appears on the Queen Mary? Let's find out in today's video. Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Here today, we will be discussing the terrifying happenings on board the Queen Mary ship. So let's get started. The ocean liner RMS Titanic sank on April 15, 1911, after colliding with an iceberg during her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City. There were an estimated 22 to 24 people on board the ship, including crew members, and more than 1,500 of them lost their lives when the ship sank. Built by the White Star Line, the ship was planned to be the largest and most luxurious passenger liner in the world. It had spacious staterooms, a swimming pool, gymnasium, Turkish baths, an a la carte restaurant, and much more. The Titanic was touted as being virtually unsinkable, and despite many warnings from experienced sailors about icebergs in the area, the ship continued its journey at full speed. On the night of the sinking, lookouts spotted an iceberg in the ship's path, but it was too late. The Titanic collided with the iceberg and sustained significant damage to its hull. The ship began to sink, and passengers and crew members were forced to abandon ship. Many people jumped into the icy waters, while others stayed on board until it was too late to escape. Some people survived by boarding lifeboats or floating debris. However, the majority of people on board the Titanic perished, making it one of the deadliest disasters in maritime history. The sinking of the Titanic shocked the world and led to significant changes in maritime safety regulations. An investigation was launched to determine the cause of the sinking, and it was found that a combination of factors, including excessive speed, insufficient lifeboats, and a lack of proper communication systems, contributed to the disaster. As a result, measures were taken to improve safety on other ships, such as requiring ships to carry enough lifeboats for all passengers and crew members and establishing a 24-hour radio service to provide continuous weather reports and iceberg warnings. Today, the legacy of the Titanic lives on through museums and memorials that have been built to honor the victims of the disaster. The site of the sinking is also a popular destination for researchers and enthusiasts who are interested in learning more about this historic event. Now that we've covered some of the history of the Queen Mary, let's move on to the haunted engine room. If you ever visit the ship, you'll probably notice that the ship has been turned into a hotel. And just like any other hotel, you're able to book a room and stay there overnight. However, if you book a room on the Queen Mary, you may not want to choose the engine room. The engine room is located in the lower decks of the ship, and it is where the boilers and engines that powered the ship were housed. It is said that the spirits of the workers who died while maintaining the engines still linger here. One of the most active areas in the engine room is the coal bunker room. Here, coal was stored for the ship's boilers, and it is said that the ghosts of the workers who loaded the coal can often be seen. Some visitors have reported hearing the sound of footsteps and voices coming from the coal bunker room, even though no one is supposed to be in there. Others have reported seeing shadowy figures moving around the room or even standing at the entrance as if waiting for something. Apparition sightings aren't exclusive to the coal bunker room. In fact, the entire engine room is said to be haunted. Some people have reported seeing the ghost of a man in an old-fashioned engineer's uniform walking along the engine room corridors. Others have seen the apparition of a woman in a white dress standing at the foot of the main engine. Some people have even heard the sound of machinery starting up or the ringing of bells, even though the engine room has not been used for decades. One of the most famous stories about the engine room is the tale of a worker who was crushed to death by a falling boiler. It is said that he was working on the boiler when it fell, crushing him to death. His body was never recovered, and it is believed that his spirit is still trapped in the engine room. Visitors have reported feeling a sudden drop in temperature, as well as hearing the sound of heavy machinery and screams in the middle of the night. The engine room is not the only place on the ship where apparitions have been reported. The ship's first-class promenade deck is also said to be haunted. This is the area where the wealthy passengers enjoyed leisurely strolls while the ship was sailing. It is here that the ghost of a little girl in a Victorian nightgown has been seen walking along the deck. She is believed to be the ghost of a young girl who died on board the ship. Another popular spot for apparition sightings is the ship's library. This is a cozy room with shelves lined with books, and it is a popular spot for tourists to relax. However, it is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a sailor who died in a fight on board the ship. His ghost is said to appear as a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. The ship's ballroom is also said to be haunted. This is a large, elegant room with a dance floor and live music. It is a popular spot for events and parties, but it is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who died on board the ship. Her ghost is said to appear as a white figure dancing alone in the ballroom. But why do these apparitions keep showing up on the Queen Mary? Well, it's simple. The ship has a portal to hell. When the Queen Mary was built, it was considered to be the height of luxury and sophistication. The ship was equipped with everything that a passenger could possibly need, including a gym, a swimming pool, and even a Turkish bath. The ship was also one of the first to have air conditioning. All of these features made the ship very popular with wealthy travelers. However, the ship's grandeur was not to last. In 1936, the Queen Mary was involved in a serious accident when it collided with another ship. Although no one was injured, the accident damaged the ship's reputation. To make matters worse, the ship was seized by the British government during World War II and used as a troop transport. The ship was also used to transport prisoners of war, which made the ship even more unpopular. After the war, the ship was returned to civilian service, but it was no longer the luxury liner that it once was. The ship was eventually sold and scrapped. But before it was broken up, the ship was opened to the public as a tourist attraction. Today, visitors to the ship can explore the engine room, the boiler room, and the captain's quarters. The ship is also home to a museum that tells the story of the ship's construction and its role in World War II. One of the most popular attractions on the ship is the Portal to Hell, which is located in the engine room. The portal is a small opening in the wall that is said to lead to hell. According to legend, the portal was created when the ship was being built and a careless worker dropped a red-hot piece of metal down the shaft. The metal landed on a pile of sulfur and ignited it, creating a small fire. The crew tried to put out the fire, but it was no use. The fire burned for days, and the smell of sulfur was so bad that the crew nicknamed it the Portal to Hell. Although the story of the Portal to Hell is just a legend, it makes for a great story to tell tourists. And the opening in the wall does add a little bit of mystery to the engine room. Many of the ship's apparitions are said to be benevolent, meaning they are not harmful to humans. However, there are some malevolent spirits on board the ship, meaning they are evil and may cause harm to humans. These spirits are typically associated with the ship's more violent past, such as the workers who died in accidents or the prisoners of war who were transported on the ship during World War II. If you are visiting the ship and you encounter a malevolent spirit, it is important to stay calm and do not engage with the spirit. Instead, try to ignore it and move away slowly. If the spirit persists, then you should leave the area and seek out a member of the ship's staff. They will be able to help you and protect you from any harm. So if you are planning on visiting the Queen Mary, be sure to avoid the engine room. Who knows, you might just encounter one of the ship's many apparitions. Have you ever seen a shadow person? Some people say they have seen dark, human-like figures lurking around their home or even following them. Others claim these mysterious beings appear in their bedroom at night when they are vulnerable and defenseless. While many believe that shadow people are nothing more than figments of our imagination, there are just as many who swear by their terrifying existence. So what are they, and where do they come from? Let's find out. Are you alone in this world, or is there something else watching you from the shadows? We can't see into the darkness all around us, and sometimes we don't want to because we don't know what might be hiding there. There are some things that go bump in the night that may be best left unknown, like the so-called shadow people that many of us have heard about, but few of us have actually seen. These shadowy figures have been spotted by numerous people throughout history, and each encounter is unique and unforgettable. They tend to appear as dark, human-like figures with long, distorted shadows that seem to stretch endlessly. The scary thing is, they look eerily similar to the observer, almost as if it's their doppelganger. Sometimes they're only seen in peripheral vision, and other times they loom over their victims while they sleep. The scariest part of all is that many report seeing shadow people during sleep paralysis, which leaves them unable to move or speak until they regain consciousness. It's a truly horrifying experience that has been described as one of the most terrifying things to ever happen to a person. But why does this happen, and how can we protect ourselves against it? Sleep paralysis is a temporary inability to move or speak that can occur during the transition between wakefulness and sleep. It often results in an intense feeling of fear and anxiety. This state usually lasts for a few seconds, but it can occasionally extend up to minutes. During this time, the victim is aware of their surroundings and may even be able to hear and see things clearly. However, they are unable to communicate with others or move their limbs, making it impossible to defend themselves. People who experience sleep paralysis often report seeing shadow figures looming over them or standing at the foot of their bed. These figures can appear in various forms, such as dark shapes, shadowy figures, or even humanoid creatures. In some cases, the victims are even able to interact with the entities, such as shaking hands with them or engaging in conversations. One of the most common theories regarding shadow people is that they are demons or evil spirits that feed on human fear. According to this belief, Shadow people can enter a person's body through their aura or energy field and control their actions. This can lead to sleep paralysis and other paranormal experiences, such as out-of-body experiences and astral projection. Another theory suggests that shadow people are interdimensional beings that exist in parallel universes. It is believed that they can enter our world through rifts in the space-time continuum, causing disturbances in the physical and psychological well-being of individuals. Some believe that these shadow people are not inherently malicious, but are simply curious about humans and our world. However, they may cause harm unintentionally due to their advanced abilities and lack of understanding of our physical laws. It is also possible that shadow people could be the manifestation of a person's own subconscious mind. This theory suggests that they represent repressed emotions, unresolved psychological issues or fears and anxieties that linger in the depths of the mind. When these thoughts and feelings become too overwhelming to handle consciously, they manifest themselves as shadow people, preying on our vulnerabilities and taking on a life of their own. There are also beliefs that shadow people are the souls of deceased individuals who are unable to move on to the afterlife. These lost souls may become attached to living people, causing them to experience paranormal activity and even possession. Shadow people can also be the result of a person's own death, where the soul remains tethered to the physical body after death, causing the individual to appear as a shadow person to those around them. In addition to these theories, some believe that shadow people are extraterrestrial beings that visit Earth from other planets. These aliens may be observing humans or conducting experiments on them, which can lead to sleep paralysis and other strange phenomena. Another belief is that shadow people are the result of government experiments and are often used as a metaphor for the unknown consequences of scientific research and technological advancements. While there is no concrete evidence to support any of these theories, they offer interesting perspectives on the nature of shadow people and their potential origins. It is important to note that some of these beliefs may be based on cultural or religious beliefs and may not be considered scientifically valid. Nevertheless, exploring these different viewpoints can provide insight into the various ways that humans have sought to explain and understand the paranormal. Now let's take a look at some of the encounters people have had with shadow people. One Reddit user wrote, "I was staying in a dorm with my friends during college. One night I woke up from something scratching at the window. I assumed it was my cat, so I ignored it. Then I started to feel an overwhelming sense of dread. I tried to tell my boyfriend, who was sleeping next to me, but I couldn't make a sound. I turned my head to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. It was tall and thin with sharp features. I couldn't see its face, but it seemed to be staring at me. Then it started to approach me and my boyfriend. My heart was racing and I felt paralyzed with fear. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. As the figure moved closer, I could feel its cold, putrid breath on my neck. And then I woke up. The scratching sound was still coming from outside the window. My boyfriend was fast asleep, oblivious to my terror. I got out of bed to investigate, and much to my surprise, it was my cat. I let her in and curled up back in bed next to my boyfriend. I never told him about the figure because I didn't want to scare him, and thankfully, it never came back." Another Reddit user said, "When I was in college, I lived in a small apartment complex with several other students. One night I was awoken in my bed by a scratching sound. I assumed it was mice and didn't think much of it. However, the scratching continued throughout the night and became more aggressive. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting louder and more frantic. Then I started to feel a presence in the room. I turned my head and saw a dark figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was tall and thin and seemed to be made of darkness. I couldn't make out any features, but it was staring at me, paralyzed with fear. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure began to approach me, and I could feel its icy cold touch on my skin. I struggled to move, but it was as if an invisible force was holding me down. Then suddenly the figure stopped and vanished into thin air. Startled, I got out of bed and turned on the lights. To my relief, I saw no one. I never told anyone about this experience because I was embarrassed and afraid of being labeled crazy. However, I still think about that dark figure to this day. And another Reddit user said, "One night I was awoken in my bed by a loud crash. I assumed it was my roommate, but when I called out to her, there was no reply. Concerned, I got out of bed to investigate. As I walked down the hallway, I noticed a dark figure standing at the end of the corridor. It was tall and slender with sharp features. I couldn't make out its face, but it seemed to be watching me. Paralyzed with fear, I tried to call out for help, but no sound came out. The figure began to approach me, and I could feel its cold, putrid breath on my neck. Desperate to escape, I turned and ran back to my room. I locked the door and hid under my covers, shaking with terror. All night I could hear footsteps pacing back and forth outside my door. I never emerged from my room that night, and I haven't seen that dark figure since. I still wonder who or what it was. Do you believe in shadow people? Have you ever experienced anything similar to these stories? Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and comment below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.